Under the dark canopy of the now legendary Serebryansky Forest, the echoes of explosions and the roar of war machines bear silent witness to the destruction of Russian troops who dared to breach Ukrainian defense lines. The once quiet and dense terrain has now become a field of death, an open grave for anyone who tries to challenge the resilience of the Ukrainian defenders. The drone pilots of the 63rd BBS Brigade once again demonstrated their deadly precision and decisiveness. With impeccable coordination and high speed, the UAV unit attacked every enemy movement detected among the burned trees and cracked earth from artillery. In the cold, unfeeling view of the FPV cameras, every enemy step was hunted down until no trace remained. The attack began as several groups of Russian infantry attempted to penetrate a narrow path in the forest southwest of Serebryansky. They moved cautiously among the debris, hoping to escape aerial surveillance, but the skies were already under Ukrainian control. Within seconds, the FPV drones swooped low, piercing the smoke, and struck their targets with devastating force. Explosion after explosion rocked the forest. Enemy bodies were blown away, vehicles burned, and their positions were completely destroyed. Nothing escapes the eyes of the 63rd Brigade, one of the pilots calmly reported in a field report. This forest now speaks with our voices. Every tree bears witness to their fall. Now, Serebryansky was more than just a forest. It had become a symbol of steadfastness and death for the invaders. Every inch of its land defended with blood and courage. Behind every flying drone were the fearless hands of young Ukrainian pilots, making each attack not just a tactic, but a warning. There was no way back for the enemy on this land. Currently, Ukrainian forces are exploiting intimate knowledge of supply routes they recently abandoned in the Serebryansky Forest, using drone surveillance to systematically destroy Russian troops attempting to use the same paths, turning a tactical withdrawal into a devastating trap near Yampil. Here, the Russians started using old Ukrainian supply routes in the Serebryansky Forest to move troops for their next move. However, as Ukrainians held these positions for months, their drone operators knew exactly where to strike, tracking all their movements and unleashing devastating fire on the enemy front line and forces moving into position. As you remember, Ukrainians withdrew in one go from the Serebryansky Forest, as Russians had taken their handful of viable logistics routes through the trees, under fire control with drones. However, this gave Ukrainians the brilliant idea and opportunity to turn the tables around on the Russians, as they knew exactly which paths were viable and where the Russians would be moving. In one geolocated video, a Ukrainian FPV fiber-optic drone tracked a Russian UAZ Patriot near Kreminna, deep behind the front line, and destroyed it with a precise hit, eliminating the officer inside. At the same time, a second drone confirmed the kill, showcasing how the layered Ukrainian drone operation works. In another case, soldiers of the 63rd Brigade tracked the movement of supply trucks instead, following them to a camouflaged Russian drone control point hidden in the forest. A strike destroyed not only the position, but also the Russian drone operators inside, as well as their nearby ammunition depot. Each of these incidents illustrates how the predictable use of the limited, old Ukrainian supply routes has made Russian forces vulnerable, easy to find, and easy to destroy. The lack of defensive infrastructure compounds Russia's problems, as Ukrainians had not dug new trenches as they withdrew in one go, leaving Russians with large areas without dugouts, tunnels, or proper fortifications. This left even less space for Russians to store supplies and equipment, which were now all concentrated on several larger routes through the forest. Russian troops moving in now must make do with foxholes and improvised shelters, which offer little protection against artillery and none against drones attacking from above. In one video, overcrowding forced Russian soldiers to leave their weapons and ammunition outside a dugout. A Ukrainian drone operator spotted the stash and, with only 4 munitions dropped, destroyed the dugout and its armaments in a clean strike. Poor sheltering options combined with limited space turn each Russian attempt to consolidate positions into a fresh disaster. This dynamic is bleeding the Russians before they can even engage in a real battle for Yampil. After taking one bigger trench fortification at the end of the forest across the village, Russian commanders hoped to use it to advance more easily. On the contrary, this has made their attempts even more predictable than they already were, with every step forward turned into a death march for their assault groups. A video from Ukraine's 81st Airmobile Brigade shows 2 surviving Russians, the last of an assault group, who briefly hid in a basement after their comrades were eliminated on the approach. Ukrainian drone operators targeted their hideout, forcing them into the open where Ukrainian infantry shot them down on an open road like at a shooting range. Ukrainian troops report that similar attempts repeat daily as Russian commanders keep sending small groups into Yampil, but almost none survive. Ukrainian drone surveillance monitors every movement, destroying infiltrators before they gather strength, which buys critical time for the defense of the settlement. Ukrainian fighters highlight that without the drones, their overstretched defenses would be under far greater pressure. Instead, Yampil remains under Ukrainian control, with Russian assaults collapsing before they can establish any foothold. Overall, by abandoning the forest in one go instead of in a drawn-out battle while on the back foot, the Ukrainians forced Russia into using the very routes that once threatened them, turning what was once a liability into an advantage. Now they have effectively become kill zones for Ukrainian surveillance and firepower, with Russian assault groups being shredded by drones before they can mass. The Serebryansky Forest has turned into a trap, and is currently far from being Russia's staging ground for deeper breakthroughs. Meanwhile, the settlement of Yampil is being held firm by Ukrainians and remains a stronghold that makes every Russian step a costly one. The reality is a brutal whack-a-mole, where Ukrainian defenders strike infiltrators in the air, on the ground, and even underground by depriving them of their route through. The Russian ministry's triumphant numbers collapse under logic and basic calculation, while reality shows friendly fire and a mounting Russian death toll. Serebryansky is far from a victory for Russia. In contrast, it is their graveyard, and this trend has continued for almost 2